justice to the trip I experienced coming here. As I said, I had heard about Tom and Esther for a couple of years. I have no idea who they are. I'm really grateful that they had this open. But last night we came first through Kelowna, where the pollution was so heavy that I really felt the stress on my body. And then coming up the hill and coming into cleaner air, and then we came through some incredible weather. There was some incredible weather, and once we passed that weather, we ended up in Magic Land. There was one place, I have no idea where it was, but we looked up and the trees were just misted. Everything else was clear, but the trees were up on the hill were in mist. And it just put us into a different land. And then coming into Grand Forks last night, there was that mist, this incredible mist hanging around again. And all I could think of is Brigadoon. Like it was like walking into a movie. So I was like, I'm really pleased to be here. So I just wanted to share that.
Hi, my name is Zelaya Leyland, and holding the stick is a challenge for me, so I'm accustomed to talking without, I use my hands, so the stick ends up being something I have to hold on to instead of using my hands. I have noticed in other gatherings that I've been at, particularly ones that deal with building community, there is sometimes the thought of preparation for change and a focus on what we've left as far as pollution and noise and all of that, and how nice it is to be where we are. And for me, I travel all the time, and so there are times when I'm where it's noisy, and there are times that I'm where it's quiet. And so it's an opportunity to take my peace with me wherever I am. So if I'm in the middle of the city, my peace is still there. And if I'm in the middle of a traffic jam, my peace is still there. And what I find myself doing is visualizing the world the way I choose it to be, rather than whatever is happening or appears to be happening at the moment. For me, that works, and I invite you. Yeah. When I very first started out, it didn't happen. So I was parking by gas station so that we get back. That was good. That's funny.
We've gotten a few more people that I haven't seen before. Morning, afternoon. Hi. Thank you for allowing me the time to share a little bit of myself and my path. My name is Troy Leonard. Those of you who were not here before, it's actually a name I've taken on when I was 29 years old, or 30 around that time. My actual name that I came with was Ralph Schmidt. And my wife said after she got married to me, she said, I don't want to become a Schmidt house. So I wasn't attached to it at all, so we did a bit of numerology for about a year and studied it and studied our names and the effects and the four that my name came out to, by the way, and that it was a bit difficult. And so we decided to use the information we had of the knowledge we'd been given like a key to sort of change things a bit. And I believe by taking on the name Troy Leonard, it's actually helped me professionally do what I do instead of Ralph Schmidt. Not that I have anything against Ralph. It's still me, and I speak to Ralph quite a bit inside of my heart, because he's the little boy in me. That, you know, I always say, no matter how old I'll get, I'll always have my little boy to go back to, and to, again, learn to take things in a playful way, a clownish way. And of course, Ralph has been made sometimes out to be a bit of a joke, with dogs being called Ralph and clowns and so on. And I kind of appreciate that. And yet the root of Ralph is very interesting. It comes out of the German energy of Rolf, which actually has its root in wolf. And so if you might say one of my totems that I came with then is based on that animal in life. And it was very interesting as a young boy how we used to go to Sylvan Lake with my parents to go camping every year. And one year at this trapper's cabin, that I'm always an explorer. I always want to see what's over the next hill or behind the next bush. There's something there, I don't know what it is. I found a white wolf, and he was dead. And that too is a symbol that I've had to look at for a long time and understand that the spirit wolf in me, which is the white wolf, you see, is something that I had to regenerate or rejuvenate or bring back to life. And so this is one of my journeys, is to be a wolf in a way, because I travel like one. I don't always like to go back the same way that I go or come. I like to explore new ways. I like to find back alleys, to find ways that are quicker or better, and sort of explore things on that in that level. And that's my wolf in me. Sensitive, definitely a loner, but also likes the idea of group. And once a wolf is chosen, or one of the qualities of the wolf is loyalty. And it's very interesting that loyalty is a key name or key term or key quality I've been focusing on all these years now, is to be loyal. Loyal to what? Loyal, first of all, to my heart. And if I'm truly loyal to my heart, then I'm also loyal to my soul and its dictate, and the work that needs to be done here on earth. And I'd also like to throw things out at you, a few things that many of you will know these things, but maybe another perspective. And I'm also going to be throwing a few things esoteric your way that I have gotten in touch with that I believe to be true. I follow those truths until they change. Then the truth has changed, and maybe tomorrow it'll be different, and my truth will change. I always give allowance for that. So it's that opportunity at this time that we're all coming to this place of being loyal to your truth, to yourself, to your true self, to your true messenger inside, which is constantly there waiting, always been there, waiting to have the quiet inner sound or inner voice that is within each of us to be heard. And for me, it's an absolute necessity. I know that I'm an old soul, as many of you are here, and that we're coming at this time to a point of completion. And it was in about, 1968, 1970, around that time, that I found myself in the 1968 it was, 1968. 1970, now I'm getting a little bit confused. Around that period of time, I found myself living in the Kootenays. And I don't believe in time as such anymore, so to speak. Every time I put a watch on, they seem to go on me. Within a few months, they just stop. Don't know how many others of you have had this experience, but watches don't seem to work on me. They just sort of stop. And again, it's an indication that time is different from what we've made time to be. And I believe that time is related to consciousness. And that it's in consciousness that we get an understanding of what time is, or what I call rhythms and cycles. And it's always been interesting to me. And even as a young boy, my friends have found that I've been a bit of a stranger, or different from, not really big different, but definitely different from others, because even as a young teenager and as a young boy, I would stop and consider the universe is spinning in a blade of grass. And literally seeing them with my inner eye as energy, somehow by reflecting or contemplating on that blade of grass or anything at all, suddenly a revelation will start to come that everything in life is vibrational and will vibrate at a certain frequency or at a certain level, a rhythm. And if we can get in touch with understanding that rhythm and getting to know the rhythm of a thing, a plant, an animal, a rock, a stone, whatever it is, and the rhythm of our bodies, which is most important, we get to know the secret of regeneration, rejuvenation, and harmony. So we can harmonize at that point with that rhythm of whatever energy it is. And this took me deeper and deeper into exploration. And in my early 20s, 22 to 23, I found myself living in the Kootenays in Nelson, and outside of Nelson, and also experiencing for the first time what might be called initiation into meditation, other than gazing of a blade of grass as a young boy, which I believe was a form of meditation itself. So it was at that point at the Yodashara ashram near Nelson, in that area, Belfer, in that area of the Kootenay Lake, that I received a lot of revelations by traveling and living around that lake area. I never belonged to the ashram, but I've been meditating there whenever I go through there and make sounds in Ainsworth hot caves, and sort of let the sounds, how many of you have been in Ainsworth hot caves? Let the sounds reverberate through the caves. It's just a wonderful thing to do a gentle om or a hum and just let the sounds flow through there. It's very deeply healing. And I believe when we go into a cave, when we go into a hot spring, when we enter that state of closeness to the fire of the earth and the hot water and the sulfur and all, that we heal a lot of inner pains, maybe difficulties we've had, denials we've been pained about or hurt about, that by going into that state of symbolic womb and by making the sounds, we sort of harmonize ourselves and feel more whole coming back out. I feel like I'm rebirthed coming back out each time out of there. And I believe that one of my teachers connected to me at that point in the Kootenays, whom I've been, whatever you want to call it, channeling, channel, mediate, guidance through, that I got in touch with, and that is Merlin. One of my guides that I feel very strongly about is the magician Merlin. And of course my little child Ralph always felt very close to magic. And Merlin to me is a sort of symbol of that magic. There are many magicians. So I've been studying magic quite a bit. And I'm trying to understand, what is magic? How does it work? How have the stories of history taken place? How can we create magic? How is it that this incredible building has been created here? And in this building, with all the energy and effort made to put it together, this symbol of sand, symbolic of time, by the way. Sand is symbolic of time. And here's that beautiful, thank you again, Sean, for making that concentric and circles going into a center. Sand is so important. This is all part of that symbology, part of that mysticism, part of trying to understand the elements in nature themselves, earth, air, water, and fire. And when those four elements come together, and we ourselves vocalize those four elements, we do anyway, in us, for we are a representation of those elements, then we can centralize the point of the cross in us. We become the four directions. We become the four seasons. We become the four elements of life. And in the moment of the human element, taking those 4 elements of nature and focalizing it in ourselves with consciousness, we take it to the 5th kingdom. We take it into the spirit kingdom, consciously. The spirit kingdom will go on anyway, but the human race has been brought here for a very special reason and a very special purpose. To be the custodians and caretakers of our planet, and to help provide our integral energy to be an integral link with the other kingdoms to bring it into a spiritual realm. All is already spirit, but there is a definite process that is being undertaken here on this planet. And my search led me at 22 to have a book fall my way, and also my first teacher on the physical plane, a man who taught me about telepathy and also about what's called sacred wisdom, the ancient wisdom, the wisdom of the masters, the wisdom of the guides. And this is what I got in touch with through a man named John Riga, who lived with me in the Kootenai areas many years ago. And he was my first teacher in this regard, where we took, for instance, a winter and started to inhabit a cabin in the forest. And we read a lot of Alice Bailey material. I don't know if any of you have ever gotten in touch with Alice Bailey and her teachings. And the teachings, Moni, please. The teachings of Master DK, or also known as the Tibetan. And this is my inner teacher. He has been with me since that time that John came my way, and the first book called Letters on Occult Meditation was given to me that became my study program. And from that, treatise on white magic, esoteric astrology, esoteric psychology, cosmic fire, glamour, a world problem, all of these are Bailey channeled materials by Master DK. So what I'm talking about right now is that there is what I call a white spiritual brother-sisterhood of life. And that these beings who've gone before and yet are here again, and are here both in form and out of form, are what we call the spiritual planetary. I don't know if you like this word or not. I've gotten quite comfortable with it. It's called hierarchy. And so we have, like in everything in life, a certain hierarchy of steps that we have to go through. And it's interesting when someone mentioned this morning the stepping stones that are here, upon which we're slowly moving up. And that it really is a hierarchy, or a stepping up, a stepping process into higher and higher frequencies. More and more what I call refinement. And that's what's happening. The guidance of Master DK and many of the other masters that maybe some of you have heard about, there are so many of them, Master Jesus, Kurhumi, Moria, there are so many of them. Well, look who's here. So good to see you, Marie. My God. An old friend from many, many years ago. I'm so pleased to see you here. I knew I had to be here today for some reason. And of course, Maynard too, I know from many, many years ago in Calgary. But Maureen has been part of a group that I'll get to in a moment that started in Calgary many, many years ago. When I started in the Kootenays, one of the things I promised to do was to follow my dreams. And as Ralph, I always had vivid dreams. And so I felt that there was some guidance here, because they were quite tremendous dreams, amazing dreams. So I started dream diarying when I was in my early 20s, and I had filled books after books and years after years of dreams, and really didn't study other people's interpretations as much as my own understanding of them. So this really gave me a lot of inner guidance about myself, looking at when there were worms in my dream, what I was worming about, why I was upset about certain things, or not at peace with myself. And it's one of the things that I feel I've come to learn in this life, on this planet, is to learn how to be loyal to myself and as such follow my soul's guidance, but also to find peace in the midst of stress, strain. And when you encounter differences of vibration, you automatically get into friction. The moment there are two people that are a bit different from each other, we will have some friction, no matter what happens. And sometimes I call that friction a judgment. So the moment I stepped in here and started to speak, or even before, you judged me. Here I am, I've got glasses, I can't see too well, I may be a bit bottom heavy in certain areas. I may have very white hair at an early age and all of those things. These are all things that go through our mind as we look at a person right away, and we make so subconsciously and so immediately judgments in ourselves about people. And yet we need to turn that around and realize that this is an evaluative process. Maybe it's a bit of information about a person, etc., etc. But inside of us, we're all the same. We have the same needs, requirements, and one of the greatest of which is love, is acceptance and understanding. And Ian, is it, that did that beautiful stick? Wonderful stick. I love humor, and this reminds me so much of a clown. It's just so wonderful. See, here's the Joker. You see, that's what it's really all about. So when I got my big dream, after my dream diary, and the dream told me to go back to Calgary. By the way, I worked in the Kootenay area at that time around Nelson. I was employed by a forestry company. And I had to learn how to do the ABCs of forestry from beginning to end. Laying out a cutting block, worked with the cutter, worked with the subcontractors who came in to take care of it, etc. By the way, this is a company called Darkwoods Forestry. I don't know if some of you have ever heard of it. It's around Nelson area. They own huge tracts of land, and their home base is Germany. These are high-class family that own a lot of land or leased it from the Canadian government, and they forest it. That's very interesting. And of course, what they wanted to do was bring in a Germanic type of style of forestry process in there. And because I spoke German, I became an employee of theirs for a period of about two and a half years. So that's when I received my big dream. And meanwhile, during that time, I've been already involved with what we'd call the so-called hippies, living in the hills of the Kootenays of that time, and doing primal scream and doing all kinds of self-growth work and yoga and into herbs and building their own cabins and so on in the forest, and of course growing their own grass and all of those things as well. So that was my early 20s. So for a little period of time, I joined them. Of course, this went very much against my German employers, who felt that this was not the way to represent their image to the community. So they gave me an ultimatum. Said you have to either let go of your friends in the hills, whom they had found out about, long hair and all, and I was very short-haired, green uniform, the whole bit, very Germanic even, sometimes had lederhosen on. We were very Germanic. It was a lot of fun, and I remember one day when my boss came with, and he wore that very German outfit with the hat, green hat and a feather, and very Germanic with all of it. When he came into the forestry and the loggers were there, they were literally rolling on the ground laughing at the Germanic expression that was there. But again, I'm not here to judge the Germanic energy because I'm also a part of it. So when I received my big dream that told me to go back to Calgary, or where I had come from my parents' home when I left it at 18, and to start a center, then I had already done a lot of fasting, cleansing, yoga, iridology, reflexology, some shiatsu. Those were my beginnings, about looking into people's eyes, and a lot of 10, 14-day fasts, Stanley Boros's Master Cleanse, lots of that. Very good stuff. That I was ready with whatever what was needed. And this is when my soul came in my dream and said, go to Calgary and begin to build a center. And it was in Calgary that the center, which was the core group energy of spiritual people involved in Calgary that I was interested in, began to become part of my life in Calgary. And it was there that and it was a year later or so that I made a connection to a man down in Houston, Texas, named William David at that time, that connected me to a system of vibrational therapy called sound, color, and vibration. that I've been adapting and working with ever since that time, 1976. 74 I started with Master DK's, or Master Dejwa Kul, known as the Tibetan, his influence through the books, but I wanted to know more than just the books. I wanted to meditate with a group of people that understood that which I was studying in a different way, and work with them. And I got in touch with a center in Houston, in Texas, that William was the director of, the Esoteric Philosophy Center, the school. And I phoned him and wanted to study with him, and he recommended that I get with the people that I was involved with there, enough people together in Calgary to introduce him to Canada. And so he came to Canada in 1976 for the first time, and that is how I've been involved through that group with Maureen, who's been very much part of that group for many, many years. And I'd just like to say that once William had come and given us this system to work with, how to work with color psychology, sound, the hum, the om, and the vowels. The consonants didn't come in so much, but the vowels came in initially. It's called the 7 vowels that make up the 7 centers in the body, and the response to those, that I started to work in depth with the system of energy. And that's been my area of work, and that has taken me from where I am to all places, a lot of places, England, initiation at Glastonbury, at the Chalice Well, then at the Tor, to be initiated through the Crown in 1976, an experience in Vancouver that really opened at the top of my crown with a group organized by the 3HO organization, a group that sponsored about 10 major speakers in the world at that time to come together. Theodore Roszak, Rolling Thunder, Pierre Viliat Khan was there, Buckminster Fuller I met there, David Spangler from the Fintorn group at that time was there. And it just, when people of such caliber and energy came together, and 1,000 of us in the Hilton room came to, I don't think there were a whole 1,000 together that moment, but close to that, chanting the Om in synchronicity and in harmony of sounds together until it lifted up everything. It literally stimulated the base of my spine, energy, the fire, and started to move through me, and literally I felt the top of my head coming off. And since that time I feel I haven't been here much. Often I've been out there, traveling, communicating, thinking about different energies. Colors are coming in more and more into my life, and I never had auric vision. But in the years that I've studied and worked with the aura and the colors and all, I have developed the capacity to see or see the aura and the light of it and the colors. So this is something that whether you have a hidden talent in it, it's natural, or something you'd like to develop that you can do. It's not that difficult. You just have to persist. One of the things about the path is persistence. Don't stop. Take a break, but then get back into it. See? Don't give up. The rewards are immense. And so I would like to take, I know I don't have a lot of time. There are other speakers that will have the opportunity to speak here today. I'd like to share a little bit more about the philosophy I've come to at this time. The realization that when people talk about revelation and ascension and transcendence, that is so much being battered about these days, especially ascension and all of it, and especially revelation, that we are literally ascending to a new rate of frequency, a new level of light, a new level of light, color, energy. And that is our Earth's path, that we're here refining the elements of the four through the consciousness of knowledge that we as humans have, and as humans have as choice. Because that's one thing we do that other energy forms don't have to the same degree. They are naturally impulsed on their own, and they will go that way no matter what. They will instinctively move that way. We will too, but then we'll block ourselves with choice and stop and think about it and say, no, I don't want to. or yes, I will, or maybe, or I'm not quite ready yet, you see? And we make that choice in life. And another thing I found out that I believe in is that in the end, we don't have any choice at all. That we'll be inexorably, whether we like it or not, like a particle to a magnet, drawn to that place, and we won't be able to get away from it. And so it's the choice of resistance, greater resistance, now or later, that we're really facing, you see? So there's really no choice. It's just a matter of doing it or not doing it, whatever it is that you and your giftedness carry inside of your own heart or your own being, to share with others around you, whomever it is that you find yourself drawn to. The other thing that I have gotten in touch with related to revelation is this. We all carry an etheric field around us, called an energy field, also known as the vital body. This is the one that's going to be, in the years to come, taking a lot of our studies, scientifically, experimentally, spiritually, emotionally. In many ways, we're going to be studying the effects of the aura of how color, how sound, how aromatherapy essences, how stones, crystals, and you name it, how a space such as this, which I knew I had to come here for at this time, to really feel grounded again. I've just come from 3.5 months of work in New Zealand and British Columbia, doing the work in sound, color, and vibration. And it was one city after another, 1 week to the next, a new home, a new group. It just went on, and usually that's about 7 to 10 days going on from one to the other till I covered a lot of areas. And so this is a place I felt I needed to come to this weekend to feel a little bit more anchoring with my home, which I feel to be Canada. So the other revelation that I wanted to talk to you about is this. Wherever we go, and whatever we think, and whatever we emotionally emit, and what our presence physically in our etheric field encounters, we leave a trail. See, have you ever seen that stuff on the where they do photography now, where you see a city with all the lights and all the streets and all the cars going and all, and what they do is they speed it up, or they do something where you see all the lights and they stay afterward, you know? You can see all that. That's how the etheric field works in our world. It is leaving a trail, a track behind you wherever you go. And it's interesting because I sometimes ask, why do people get jet lag? Well, their aura is not caught up with them. There are a number of reasons. One is that they're off the ground that high. They're way up in space, 35,000 feet or whatever. They're not really close to the ground anymore, so they're ungrounded. See, it takes a while to get back into the ground. But at the same time, a lot of people don't know how to safeguard their aura. See, and so it takes a bit of time for things to catch up. After you've flown about 500 miles an hour or so on, things sort of come back together again and coalesce. See, so it takes a bit of time. For some, it takes less time. For me, it actually takes no time at all, because I actually do a lot of humming when I'm on the airplane and sort of drone with the plane. See, and what I'm doing at the same time as I'm doing that is I see my cells and my energy field unified, harmonized, as I'm doing that. Because, as you know, we are composed of particles of light vibrating at a certain frequency. And I, the mind, can hold those particles in a certain form, shape, design, color, whatever it may be. And that's all part of that. But the next revelation will be the total acceptance of the field called the etheric field, first brought through the Curlian photography. And more of the future healing forms will come through the etheric field. Reiki systems, energy systems, color systems, sound systems, and so on will be used way before the physical body itself will break down or have a problem. We will then deal with the problem etherically, energetically, and that's what's now a lot of where attention is being spent, is on the energy fields. And so part of my purpose has been, with a lot of difficulties and a lot of stress and strain and a lot of resistance. I'm a strong, from my father's side, a very strong mind, very strong will. and I have been unwilling at times to do. And one of those periods of time, I remember I went into a year of total isolation and blackness. And at a certain point in one's path, you may have to go through such states. Maybe a year, maybe a month, maybe whatever it may be. But going truly deeply into yourself and finding yourself at another level. I've been doing a lot of work at that time already. Since 1979, I've been doing group work in color and sound. Another thing I share with people is I have, because of the vibrational work I've done, developed the capacity to read people's records, what's called lives, and some history of their souls and their group souls. So this is an area that sometimes opens itself up to like a door, and being given the allowance to look in when a person is there to what's called their soul history or their group soul state. Well, isn't that something? Good to see you here. So pleased. I didn't even see you here. Thank you. Beautiful people here. If I need to take a moment and just be here a bit more, because I'd like to meet you more like this. What I find, my Piscean nature, my watery nature, gets so fired up by this that I feel my water and fire are in conflict with one another. In one moment, one part of me is boiling, and the fire is moving the water up. And it's interesting to note that my fan in my car and my radiator are having problems right now. And realizing that it's very hot out right now, which, by the way, is an indication of Kundalini or fire activity in any place of the world. When you have that taking place, a lot of fires, droughts, etc., that area of the world has added in energy of fire in it. So again, this is an area I have to work with a lot, which is to bring my water to peace with all that fire that I have. So that's another one of my things. So before I go any further, I'd like to bring us at this point into an experience together. I mean, I can go on and talk and answer your questions, and they will go off into tangents, and I'll go on and on. But as I said, for the last 7-8 years, I've been traveling Australia, New Zealand, England, and Canada, and the United States to do this work. I've been very fortunate. I wouldn't have ever been able to possibly do this if I hadn't had this kind of job. So I'm very, very grateful to my spirit and to all that is here for the opportunity to be able to do what I'm doing, and to be able to see the places that I've seen. For instance, just a little while ago, a month ago, I came back from Australia. I spent a day in a kauri forest in Australia, which is unbelievable trees that are just 200 feet high, 180 to 200 feet high, straight up. You know, it's just an amazing experience to be there and to find that that morning the sky was misty in the kauri forest, and there was this big meadow there with some cows and all there as well. It's a national heritage of Australia, that area. It's near Perth and Margaret River, south of Perth. And in that meadow, I experienced something I'd never experienced before. A rainbow from one end to the other in one meadow. And you saw it from here to here, and you literally felt the glow of it come toward you, and you were just about in the thing itself. It was a drizzle, a very, very wonderful drizzle. And it just stayed and stayed. You could see the rainbow here and there in the meadow itself. It was the most wonderful experience. And by the way, I remember rainbows. Rainbow is a very special symbol. When elements come together, a very important message is that the soul is speaking to us, that we are gifted, that we are that rainbow, and to continue and to have hope and not to give up and go on is part of the symbol of it. For the pot of gold is right there, and the halo that represents the rainbow is always around and will support you. And so, let us go into the process of utilizing this moment to where we may have some differences, and we may not know each other personally, but as souls, we are one. The topical subject that has been given to me today is more like a carrot only. unity in diversity. But that's not really the totality of it, even though that might be looked upon it as that. Diversity in everything and unity at the same time. And one of the things I'd like to speak of briefly is this. The etheric field and the revelation I talked about is based upon our interconnection with a kingdom of gods, or a kingdom of life, known as the devas, or angels, which actually make up the auras, which work on our auric fields all of the time. You might say that the devas, which is the Sanskrit name for angel, there are those known as the angels of light, or colors, and of sound, and there are many, many different departments of theirs, that work with us constantly, continuously, day and night in our sleep time. And that the Tibetan has spoken in his books that the next 500 years will be very important years in which the communicational door between the angelic realm and the human realm will be furthered in terms of being opened, so that more and more people will wake up, see as children already the fairies, the elves, the angelic beings, the color forms that are there, and more, in the next 500 years, this gate, door, will be opened to where we will have more and more of a real relationship between these beings that in Lemurian time we were very closely related to, but have lost that relationship with, but now is slowly beginning to be rebound or reconnected because we have destroyed their trust. Because of the powers they had given to us as human children, not quite knowing what these powers were, powers of being able to see auras, powers of being able to influence, such as a martial artist of great capacity can both as a black magician or a white magician influence the aura or energy field of energies of people. For instance, there are martial artists that can send a certain frequency from their mind and from their sound and from their power center to a certain person that can in a week's time slowly come into their field, vibrate itself in, and at that point erupt inside their inner organs and destroy them. These are capacities that certain people have in this world. These are powers of vibration that we need to be very careful of. Our minds have power, our thoughts, our emotions, and we have to be very, very careful what we say. And so one of the things that I've been given the opportunity to do is to link up a lot of groups, individuals, in private work, collectively all over the world. And having visited many sacred places, Ayers Rock, wanting to go to many, many others as yet as well. Haleakala in Hawaii was an important center for me to go to with my wife, who, by the way, that's another fairy tale altogether, who I met in 5 days. We decided to be married, and she finished her life in England, in London, where I met her at another symposium, where Baba Ramdas did something wonderful to a group of 200 of us. He didn't do it, but we did it, but he promoted it. And so this is another story altogether. So we have this wondrous opportunity right now to work in harmonizing. And that's why people are on the move, traveling from place to place to open up the sacred places again, the healing places that have waited for so long. The springs, a place such as this, is gathering more and more power. Pulse every year, every time, every month, every solar cycle, whatever it may be, the power is being gathered here. And this power remains both in the stick and in this energy, you see. And the spirit is coming back. And the devas, or angels, or higher guides are communicating to many now. Look into the libraries and the New Age bookstores today. It is a smorgasbord of energy, and you're so confused you don't even know which way to turn anymore, see, as to what is. But let us go beyond that at this moment and take this momentary time to use sound, color visualization, and energy to help heal whatever it is that may be not quite in harmony with you and I or each other.
Sweethearts. Did everyone receive 2 of these gift cards? Yes. This is the way I usually like to switch the energy. And as we talk about these, because the theme is on simplicity, I like you just to consider. What if these were gifts from the universe and you did not have to do anything to earn them?
That'd be perfect.
What if that was the truth?
It is the truth.
Yes, because if you think you have to earn them, then you're putting on conditions on God's gifts. And the last rumor I heard is that God's gifts are unconditional. Is love conditional? Come in the back seat of my car and I'll show you how conditional love is. All that is crap from the ego. Love is not conditional. Trust is not conditional. Faith is not conditional. Joy is not conditional. As you come in, each one can give to you. Because we will do a gift exchange here.
Come on. Oh, it's your little black dog friend, huh?
Otherwise, not that God can be offended. I don't think it's an impossibility. But if we think we even have to earn these, we're offending God. In our perception only, God cannot be offended. What if God's gifts, take 2 please, were free gratis? Just what if? What if we did not have to make circles? What if we did not have to do anything? What if we just needed to ask and be willing to receive? What if? Wouldn't that be simplicity in itself? Now, I like to look at the other question. Why aren't we experiencing? Does anyone have a burning gift in their hands that want to share? Okay, do you have any particular of these gifts that you'd like to share with us?
I have the gift of solutions, and I'm going to share that tomorrow.
And what was the other one? Was not the practicing the presence of God now?
Right? How'd you know that?
Because how can you do that tomorrow if one gift explains the other? Isn't that procrastination and isn't that a delay technique?
I'll do it today then.
Okay.
I'm scheduled for tomorrow is what I meant.
Many people are afraid actually to let the gifts in because we think we owe God something or owe something somewhere that we'll have to pay, and we have been conditioned to think that God's gifts are conditional. We have been conditioned to think that God's gifts are conditional. And the way we create our memory tension patterns, and by saying we, I'm talking about the ego self. It says you cannot take time off until you finish this. So we create a tension, And then we give ourselves permission when it's finished, go like this. So these are called tension conditions. And we can go in the side of complexity of ego into zillion, billion tension, all sorts of tensions we put ourselves on. The outside world from here, it becomes obvious that the tension patterns or stress, if I make my zillion, billion dollars, I'll be fine. If the mortgage is paid, I'm fine. If the wife would stay, I would be fine. If the wife would leave, I'd be fine. If many, many ways, then it'll be fine. And we have put on the conditions. I will be happy if. Okay. Now my question is, what if God's gifts are totally full? And the only thing that keeps them away is our conditions. Because God respects our conditions. And that is how simple it is. Since Sean put on the board simplicity, I'll give you a little bit of background on these gifts. Actually, when they first came out a few years ago, I remember going in Synergy, breakfast and toy booth. And I remember you kids. I do very well. Because so sometimes we have had fun, and there's quite often no accidents. If you really don't like any of the gifts that you pulled, I have some more, and there's some packages of more.
Can we trade them?
Yes, you can trade them with each other. You can trade them. You can give them away.
You asked me if I had a brain.
And yours
Oh,
is
sure.
gift of joy
Yeah.
and gift of being with God.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not going to trade.
And really, but why wouldn't you? I'll tell you how these came about. You see, my wife and I have a few books out, and she has very, very clear guidance come through her, very similar to A Course in Miracles. And we have a group that meets in Calgary every Wednesday until 3 weeks ago. For the first time in 13, 14 years, we took summer off till September. And one Christmas, because of the conditioning that goes on that we should buy Christmas presents, we had a bit of an argument. Shall we get presents for our group? And if we do, how much shall we spend? Well, of course we should get presents. Now, shall we spend $5? Oh my God, it's about 20. That's already $100, and it's cheap. And if we go $15 or $20, then we have to borrow money. And all of a sudden, this whole sense of commercialism hit us. And it looks like I'm probably the only one, because it looks like from the faces you don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh no, we know what
Okay. You know that feeling. So the guidance that has given the books, I usually, when I'm stuck and I have an inner dilemma, I ask the guidance, what shall we do? I have a feeling like I like to give to the group. And at the same token, it's so tied together with Christmas commercialism that I want to throw up. And in their patient way, they start asking, querying us. What is it that you like your friends to have? And I said, happiness. They say, write that down in a little slip of paper, the gift of happiness. What else? Joy. Oh, okay. Write that down. Joy. To see their innocence. Okay. Write that down. The feeling of true Christmas, which has nothing to do with December 25. Write that down. Peace. Write that down. Ease. Write that down. And I'm sure that you have so many others. And we wrote about 110 of these down in strips of paper. And everyone, mind you, I start putting some other things down, like I said, the gift of control. And the guidance nicely said there is no such a gift of God. That is definitely ego, ego, ego. Okay. I was going to put down also the gift of loyalty. And not in the way that Troy mentioned it, but like loyalty being a gift. And they said, no, only imprisonment is loyalty, in that sense that I wanted to put up. So they weeded out many, many of what I thought were tremendous gifts, but they're not God's gifts. So what has remained here, like gift of willingness, gift of anything, are spiritual gifts. And at that time I had a deep aha. I had, usually because my IQ is not the highest, I had problems of separating mental gifts from spiritual gifts. Now the interesting thing about spiritual gifts as opposed to mental gifts is that they cannot be proven. None of these gifts that you have can be proven. Love cannot be proven. The gift of proof is an ego's device. And at this point I like to, again, for the sake of simplicity, say that the ego is a master deceiver. And I have dabbed it, or given it a definition to call it the fox. That is the first one to volunteer to look after the chicken coop. Okay. The ego is the fox that is the first one to volunteer to look after the chicken coop. And let me tell you, on my road of spirituality, I'm not too much fond of terms. I have run into many foxes, many hopes and many things that try to say that they're going to lead me to the spiritual path. Just put a little in the bucket, but they promise the spiritual path. But they're all foxes. Is there love present? That's a very simple question. Again, the theme was simplicity. If there is love present, that's it. But other parts, you have to go on 50,000 zillion billion miles. That is the destination. Bringing heaven and earth can be answered by a simple question. First, would you be willing to have joy given? And this is how simple it is underneath it all. If someone is willing to sort of a process, and if I can say, are you willing to have joy present? Can we just, what would be your answer? Yes. Okay, it was easy. Who would have problems with that? Then there's no problem. If we're willing, God's gifts respond to willingness, not manipulation. And even the willingness is not a condition. It is a state for us of receptivity. Once we're willing to receive, it comes. Okay? We cannot manipulate God's gifts. Boy, have I ever tried all my life. There's still one part of me continuously trying. If I did this and this and this, and if I meditated cross-legged. I went to India and Jiva cross-legged and started wrong. Because, see, I can't even turn my thumbs backwards and they turn it this way. So all these conditions we have put up are really not necessary. They're all fun things. I'm not saying not to do these things, because that too, it is not conditional of not doing. But as such, God's gifts are always given, always have been given, always will be given, and they're never stopped, and they're given to the just, to the unjust, to the every. They're just given. where the teensy bitty of question comes in my life at least, is to my willingness to let them in, to recognize. Because many of these here, as I look, gift of safety. Oh my God, I think I have to make myself, have to buy some locks and do some door, going through the whole safety bit, rather than saying, hey, I am paranoid as hell, God. Where is your safety here? I'm still buying locks. I'm still sometimes even thought once about buying a gun for safety for this planet. The more guns, the safer. The ego, the fox logic. But very seldom like to invite the gift of safety. The gift of supportive friends. The minute I think that I will let some supportive friends in, that they might control me, there's a fear, you see. But that's not being true supportive friends. So we still have so many conditioned reflexes in our psyche which are tension patterns, which is good, which is bad, and we remember. And after a while, in a school system, if you're somewhere close to, well, I sampled many. I went, I think, to 18 different schools in 5 language changes within 3 languages. So I saw a good cross-section of our educational system. And one of the main ones was pay attention. I mean, we were kids. We're looking outside the sunshine days, beautiful, and all of a sudden, bang, pay attention for else. Like there was a threat connected with it. And of course, soon I learned that to pay attention was to create a tension pattern as if I'm looking at the backboard. And that was the price of attention to remember where I was looking. Then I go and daydream. Am I different from you guys?
No.
I'm not in the wrong pew now.
No.
Okay. So really, any tension or stress pattern is a disease. Bar none. Someone says you have to have tension patterns, you have to make plans. The thought came back. God doesn't make any plans. Nobody's going to jump in and argue with that. Why would God make plans? Because it's how powerful he is. God doesn't say, I'm going to plan this, create attention, and then I'm going to deliver it. And then some idiot is going to say, I want to know God's plan for it. I want to know God's plan for me. God doesn't have any plan. So the ego makes one up, I'll give one to you. If you want God's plan, let's give him a few, you know. And here let me divert a bit about the fox energy. Somebody says, well, what do you mean the fox that is first one to volunteer to look after chicken? In my rational mind of rationalizations, and the word rationalize means to rationalize, isn't it? Okay. So in order to rationalize, I had to make a big, huge excuse system, and I would say that Colonel Sanders is the fox that can rationalize to the nth degree, number one, that he has made more people love chicken than anybody else. And he can prove it. He can rationalize that he has created more housing for chicken than anybody else ever since history of mankind. Colonel Sanders could also argue that he has increased chicken population. And Colonel Sanders also says that he looks after the old age of chicken while he's increasing the population. No old age problem. And we can go on and on and on. You see that ego likes to rationalize things and go into proofs. Yet earlier I said among these simple cards, hardly any of them can be proven. Even friendship I had. Gift to supportive friends. Can friendship can actually be proven? Can joy be proven? Can love be proven? Can trust be proven? All these things. Yet they're the most deepest touching thing. We talk about souls here and souls there. If there is a soul, this is the deepest touching thing there is that's on these gifts. We all know it's real. Gee whiz, try to prove it in a court of law. Doesn't work. Within any adversary system, be it court of law, be it medicine, be it whatever, where something fights somebody, and we have already assumed that those foxes who have volunteered to look after our peace, called justice of peace, or I don't care, I'm not trying to put anyone down within this. But what I'm saying is that we have created categories and projected this stuff all over, where in a sense, God is simple. Ego is complex. God is unity in one. Ego is separation, diversity, the whole bit. Now my fox, when I realize the separation is, oh my God, I have to bring all of them together. I'm the first one to volunteer. And the minute I'm volunteering, I recognize I'm already part. The fox has got me. Because I cannot create any more unity than I can create love. One time, I remember, actually it's my ex-wife, I actually felt guilty because she said, promise that you will love me, that this and this, and somewhere I thought, maybe I don't, because if I have to promise, it means I come, and somehow I felt it would be a lie, as if I could come up with love and then give it to somebody. And I've been hiding that fact for probably most of my adult life. Until I think it was once I read in the Course in Miracles or whatnot, that wasn't impossible. Because to think that we can create or come up with love means that we can create God. The truth is the other way around. We don't create God, we don't create love, we don't create trust. And for me, the nicest thing to promise was this. Was I could say, of course, I'm willing to see love's presence with you at all as long as I can. Total willingness. But the promise to come up with this, I realized it is not within my scope. What a relief. Same thing about joy, about trust, about all the spiritual things. That when the fox comes in and says, I'm going to look after it, there's already a struggle being through. So in my journey, although I have many faces, because my ego has many faces, my most meaningful journey has been that of unlearning. What a beautiful place here for me to be this weekend, to further go in unlearning, because there's so much love in every rock, there's so much something is in here, okay, that I can just, for once, I can sort of let go of all my conditionings and just start seeing, oh wow, there's something so much better coming past all that into my life just being here. Anyone experience that here? So with that, let's go back again to simplicity. All these cards, although there's about 110 gifts, and people start asking, well, what do you mean by this gift? What do you mean by this gift? How do you explain this? And I mean, I can come from the fox's side and do explanations. But what my wife and I found out was more intriguing when we ask the guidance. And each time someone would ask, they dictated through my wife, and I was just the secretary writing these things down. And I just cut open, like each one of them that you have, there's already a book that's explaining that. And I'll read about gift of simplicity. Sorry, I'm boring you, Troy.
No, get my shoes.
Car windows.
Yeah, I need more light
Just
too.
take another.
Break for 1 second.
Windows.
We all have windows.
Sure.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about ours, do we?
I do.
Huh.
I'll be right back.
Simplicity.
Praise the Lord. It's coming down.
I've got to go check on the. Can I keep an eye on? Well, it's pretty level. I got to check on the massage
Okay,
too.
5 minutes recess, close the windows.
All right, 5 minutes recess.
And consequences. But we soon find that any of our solutions, however complicated and involved they may be, go nowhere. We find now that we are given a very simple solution. We are given the solution of a higher power. We are given a solution of a simple program. We are given the gift of simplicity. And somehow this whole place here reflects that. Simplicity is not tunnel vision, nor is it a lack of intelligence or knowing. The truly simple life has all knowing and understanding. It allows in everything, all ideas, awareness, and perception. The gift of simplicity then is a gift that guides us to a simple solution amidst all answers and all direction. To simplify is not to exclude. It is to allow in everything so that the best answer may be given. Discussing with Sean the process, it was amazing how you were describing this. With our higher power in charge of our lives, obtaining the best answers and the most appropriate solutions becomes simple. The direction becomes clear. What is for everyone's highest good becomes evident. The gift of simplicity is a gift of our higher power. For with our higher power, all answers are simply to let in more peace and more joy into our lives. The gift of simplicity is a simple solution. The solution of our higher power. We may, for simplicity's sake, invite any of the gifts, for that matter, because sooner or later we start to recognize that they all mean pretty well the same thing. They're interchangeable. Takes a while, though. My favorite is the gift of ease. And I will use the term God in probably the broadest sense, because I think semantically we have sort of abused the term. But if we look at the broadest sense, then forgive me, I'll use the term. God has been known as love. God has been known as peace. God has been known as power. There are many adjectives and many words, as trust, as faith, as so many things. And I decided, well, if God is that powerful and that intelligent and all those things, then of course God is also ease, with capital E. God is not that God gives us ease, God is the ease. And that did I was meditating on that for perhaps a whole year, on and off, on and off. And that was somewhere in, I think, 82. What was the year of Olympics in LA?
84.
84. I remember, did anyone watch the male marathon? Okay. They started to run, okay, male bang, and they started to run off. And of course, the announcers were quite lean because they were from the United States that we were watching. And as the runners took off, they all sort of started laughing because they said, well, this guy is leaping too far ahead too quickly, because unless he paces himself, he will lose. And then they talked, well, yeah, after all, he is from Portugal, and they don't have the high-tech knowledge that we have. And they sort of made some comments that were just a little bit off color. And now, as you know, as the runners run through the stations where, you know, they give water, this guy didn't take any water, if you remember. And now they said, well, we can almost count, you know, minutes before he will drop, because scientifically dehydration takes place, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But as it went about hour and a quarter into the marathon, now this guy was still in front of them. But I mentioned to my wife, I said, there's something much different about this character, because he is running with ease. It almost felt that if there had been a mother and a baby fallen down, he would probably go pick it up and say, you know, he would just be on running. There was none of this stress and strain. Now, if you remember the end of that, by this time, the announcers start changing their story a little bit. And in the end, they show the runners come into that stadium. This guy was way ahead. He was running in. Instead of collapsing across the finish line, he went across, he looked around, and in the stadium he saw somebody with Portuguese flag, if you remember. He went and grabbed the flag, and then he ran another lap around this whole place when the other two contenders for the medals were coming in, just trying to push and pull, and they were just coming from self-will so much that they collapsed across the line. I think they were really wanting to see who's going to get the silver and who's going to get the bronze. Now, in the middle of all this, I like to somehow illustrate that perhaps God's gifts are themselves intelligent, are invigorating, we need not add. And this guy obviously had let go and run with ease. Now we can sort of say a few other things. He ran with God. Now in healing field, the opposite comes, you know, like the contrasts. I mean, we have this place built by someone who wanted to get out of the adversary profession. Let's kill the disease, let's fight it, let's fight something stronger, bullets, stronger this, which is already in the psyche creates the adversary condition, and then it perpetuates because the fox is there. Now, Jonathan keeps on talking about semantics. You know, he keeps on, he loves it. I just overheard him, you know, we this. But the very word dis-ease, or I like to spell it dis-ease, tells it all. Now, these guys, about this big and the smaller ones outside,